So welcome to the Smart KVM musings, and today's is another interesting musing which is on the problem of accumulation. So as you might see that this term doesn't relate to software testing immediately. I think this is going to be an interesting one because it's a conversational style musing. So me and my colleague Avani will probably talk about this problem of accumulation and how it relates to the modern times of testing, more so with AI.
Thank you. So you have been obsessing over this term accumulation lately, and you mentioned it's not related to testing. But what sparked this idea?
It's probably my storage closet. I mean, a few days ago when I opened it, things just tumbled out. Things that I haven't touched for many years. Books that I meant to read, cables, devices that I no longer own, cables, lots of it, and probably even a bread maker from 6 years ago.
The one you mentioned that you're going to use every day, right?
Once upon a time, yes, every weekend, but yes, each item made perfect sense when I bought it. And bread maker, yeah, we make fresh bread, organic. The cables, yeah, who knows, we might need it someday. But the decision seemed to be rational at that moment. But now the closet doesn't close. And I really can't find what I need.
So you have too much stuff.
Yes, that's what I thought at first. And then I started noticing. I really wasn't asking, do I have too much? I was asking, how do I fit more? And therefore, I wanted bigger storage boxes, better organizers. And I was, I think, solving the wrong problem.
So optimizing storage instead of questioning what to keep.
Right. And once I saw that pattern, I started seeing it everywhere.
What do you mean by everywhere? Like where?
Like the judicial system, that thought triggered when I read an article in Hindu recently, and the headline said, the government complains about backlog, but feeds it too as the biggest litigant.
Wait, so the government is complaining about code backlogs while creating them.
Exactly. In fact, Justice Nagaratna pointed this out. She said that the state builds more courts to handle the backlog, while being the biggest source of litigation, both the complainant and the cause.
And that's the same pattern as your closet.
Yes, it is. And building bigger storage means like more courts, more judges, digitizing processes to handle accumulation, but never questioning whether all these cases should first of all exist in the first place.
How many pending cases are we talking about?
Oh, it's a crazy number. It's over 5 crore. I think it's about 5.58 crores. And each one seems to be individually justified. A regulatory violation here, a contractual dispute there, and collectively the system is drowning. And Justice Nagaratna said something that stuck with me. The state is expected to litigate with restraint and be a model litigant, but that doesn't happen. It goes on litigating until the end.
There is no pause to ask, should we be filling these cases?
There's no pause. It's just about optimizing the activity, process the cases faster, build more capacity. The purpose of justice gets lost in sheer volume.
So we just keep accumulating closets, court cases. Is there any system that handles this problem well?
Yes, actually. In fact, I was watching the baggage system at the Bangalore airport recently.
The baggage handling system, how is that even related?
That's interesting, isn't it? Because it's accumulation handled intelligently and thousands of bags moving through the system constantly. But watch what it actually does. It is not just moving bags fast.
Then what else is it doing?
Well, it is scanning the bags, it's sorting it, it's screening it, it's routing it, and therefore this bag goes to gate 12, that bag goes to gate 47. Security screens and identifies risks, weight sensors, flag the overloads, and there's appropriate routing. And that's activity aligned with the purpose.
Sorry, the screen stopped sharing.
Really.
Yeah.
And there you are. I hope you can see the screen again.
Yeah.
You see the screen again? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm telling you, it's just sorting. It's reading every tag. It's the bags are going to different gates like 12 and 47, etc. It's security screening the risks, weight sensors, flagging the overhead, the overloads, and the right routing.
So it's basically not just the speed, it's
It's purpose. It's activity aligned with purpose. And the purpose isn't just move bags fast. It's about getting the right bag to the right plane safely on time. And the system stays aligned with the purpose. If it only just moved fast without sorting, well, that would be chaos, isn't it?
yeah.
And it would be unsafe.
So the activity moving back serves a very clear purpose.
Yes, it is activity aligned with the purpose. Speed and purpose align, and that's really what makes it work.
Okay, so the airport is the model, but most systems aren't like that, are they?
Sadly, no. Most are like Bangalore traffic.
Don't remind me of that.
I was sitting in last week, 45 minutes to move a few kilometers, all around me flyovers, flyovers stacked on flyovers, 6-lane highways, elevated expressways, well, decades of infrastructure investment.
And yet it's worse than ever.
And exactly each project seemed to make sense individually. The corridor is congested, build a flyover. The junction is slow, widen the road, and all optimizing the same thing.
Making the cars move faster.
But we never pause to ask, what's the purpose of this movement? Where are people driving?
To get to work, to go to schools, shops, and live their daily life.
Yes, those are the purposes. Driving is just the activity. But we have designed a city where the only way to serve the purpose is to drive. And we wonder why everyone is driving.
So that's why we build more and more roads.
And that enables more and more driving, which creates more and more congestion, which requires more and more roads. And here's what I find interesting. This seems to create the other accumulation problems too.
What do you mean by other accumulation problems?
Like more roads need more land acquisition, what generates more litigation, more vehicles create accidents, potentially more criminal cases, you see. More accidents, more insurance claims, tribunal backlogs, and so on. I can't prove the exact causation. The pattern is suggested. One accumulation potentially feeding another.
You are trying to tell that if you optimize activity, the problems multiply.
Seemingly that's what it looks. But then let's contrast it with the picture on the right, the Amsterdam traffic jam, then and now, Netherlands.
Have they solved this problem?
Yes, they did. In the 1960s, they had the same crises, car clogged streets, rising accidents, children dying in traffic, but they asked a different question.
Not how do we make car moves faster?
Yep, it's not the activity question. They asked a purpose question. They asked what's the purpose of movement and what's the best way to serve that purpose.
And what did they discover?
The different purposes need different solutions. Customers need, children need to reach school, so build safe bike paths and walkable neighborhoods. People need to get to work across the city, and so build a comprehensive tram and metro networks. Families need shops, so use mixed zoning, and keep shops within walking distance.
So they designed it for the purpose and not for the activity of driving, right?
Exactly. And that's what happened. The activity naturally reduced. When people can hike safely to school, fewer car trips. When shops are nearby, fewer car trips. When public transit is reliable, fewer car trips.
So they did not eliminate cars by making driving harder.
Yes, they eliminated the need for cars by serving the purposes better. We moved from activity to purpose.
That's like completely different approach than what we are doing in our country.
That's possibly true completely. We optimize the activity, making driving faster, they design for purpose, and they help people reach their destinations better. And look at the outcomes. Big cities like Amsterdam and Netherlands have less traffic. It's probably one of the most bike-populated country. Fewer accidents, lower code burdens, and so on and so forth. We have more of everything, not just the population, but more traffic, more accidents, courts, and good traffic and litigation, and so on.
Yeah. So it's like when you design for purpose, the activity simplifies. When you optimize activity, it's
Multiplies, and that's the factor.
so all of these things like closets, courts, traffics. I'm guessing you are going somewhere with this.
Yeah, we haven't talked about testing at all because it's apparently amusing on assurance and smart assurance. So where are we going? Yeah, I started thinking about it in the context of our test suits.
Yeah, there it is. Now I know.
Yeah, the same pattern. We face the same burgeoning challenge. More features, therefore more tests and more platforms mean more configurations, more complexity means more edge cases, and so on.
The test suites grows, isn't it?
Yes, and our response? Optimize the activity, run the tests faster, generate more tests, automate execution, speed up the CI/CD pipeline maybe, and stuff like that.
Like building flyovers for tests.
Yeah, exactly like that. But you never pause to ask, what's the purpose of testing?
The purpose, like to test the software.
Yeah, testing is to test the software, but that's the activity. What's the purpose of that activity?
Mm. To understand if the system works or to find the risks, to have the confidence we can ship,
Yes, those are purposes. And here's my question. Do our thousands of tests serve those purposes?
or are they just activities?
That's what I wonder. Are we like Bangalore, optimizing the activity of testing while the purposes get harder to accomplish and achieve? More tests, less confidence, more coverage, less understanding, maybe.
Speeding up the activity while losing the clear sight of the purpose?
Yes, I think so.
Sounds theoretical. Are you seeing this in practice anywhere?
Yeah, interestingly, I had a couple of conversations recently, and that crystallized this entire thought. And first, let's say there's an engineering manager. I may not use the right names. So let's call her Priya. I've known her for many years.
And what's her situation right now?
Oh, she was saying she is drowning in tests. Her team spends half each sprint maintaining the suite. The tests have been written by many people over many years. Each one made sense when somebody wrote them then, but now the sheer volume is overwhelming.
So what did they do?
Well, like what the Bangalore traffic did, brought in automation tools. They helped in execution speed. Tests that took hours now run in minutes.
But like
But
what?
something shifted. When human testing took time, that time forced them to ask, is this test worth writing? Each test required thought, effort. The constraint created a natural winnowing pressure.
And automation removed that constraint?
Yes, it seemed to have, because tests became cheaper to create. Question changed from is it worth the effort to why not add it? So they automated more and more. The constraint that forced winnowing on.
They still had human deciding what to automate, right?
Initially, yes. But then they brought in AI tools. And then things really accelerated.
How so?
Well, the AI generates the test comprehensively is what they decided to use. Um, you know, decides we need to use those specific tests, and AI helps me write them. But AI analyzes the code and generates. So what happened was Priya decided that she will help them to use it to write, not analyze the code and and stuff. So it generated lots and lots of tests automatically.
Wait, the AI decides what test to write.
Seemingly, yep, human testing, humans decide. Maybe in automations, humans decide, tools execute faster. AI tools, well, the usage pattern seems to be the tool decides, generates, seems to do everything.
The human pause get eliminated entirely in the process.
That's what I seem to observe, and therefore I asked Priya, has the test suite gotten smaller? Paused, and she said, no, it's actually got bigger. The AI generates apparently comprehensive coverage, so we've added a lot more.
More tests running faster.
Yep, that's right. And so I asked, is this helping you achieve the purpose, confidence, risk finding? And she went quiet. There's so many tests, but still you find critical issues in production. I don't know anymore if you're achieving the purpose or just doing a lot of activity. That's what our statement was.
So the discipline you mentioned earlier, probe, winnow, and focus.
Seemingly, the way it is used or way some people use it, it seems to work against all these three. Sometimes people use the AI to generate, the tools seem to generate test cases comprehensively, and there's nothing to probe. It's already done. When generation is instant, there's no pressure to winnow. When everything is automated, focus becomes cover everything, not what matters most.
Sense. And you mentioned there was another conversation also. What was that about?
Yeah, that was not an engineering manager. That was like, a conversation that I had probably with a testing automation startup. Let's call the guy Rajesh.
Hmm.
I mean, he was a very passionate guy about solving the capacity crisis with AI. That's what he said.
What does this tool exactly does?
Well, what he seemed to tell me is, well, his tool is an AI-powered comprehensively test generation. He was very excited because we said, he said, hey, we automate everything. The AI generates tests, it manages the execution, it writes the code, it self-heals the code, and when tests break and so on, and teams can get all this wonderful coverage.
Wow, that sounds powerful.
Yes, it is. And then I asked him, what's the purpose these teams are trying to achieve? And he was kind of puzzled. They need to test the software. And I said, but that's the activity, but what's the purpose?
And what was his response to this?
He said to find bugs, to have quality, to ship with confidence, the standard stuff that most of us would say, right?
Hmm.
So I asked, does AI generating thousands of tests achieve those purposes or just create an activity? And he paused. He said, what's the difference? We talked about how his AI has an unprecedented capacity for discernment. It could analyze which tests may find bugs, can identify redundancy, surface the meaningful risks. But he seems to be selling it for accumulation, generate coverage via test cases, via scripts and deployment and so on at machine speed.
But why?
Well, he admitted our AI could help teams understand which tests matter, which are redundant, which actually serve the purpose, but that's harder sell. The team seem to be asking help in running more tests, not running fewer. We will help you delete half your tests. Doesn't sound like value, we'll help you run 10,000 tests automatically. Seems compelling.
So you are basically trying to tell that activity is much easier to sell than a purpose, right?
I guess it always is.
So we have moved from human testing to automation to AI tools, and at each step, the accumulation is accelerating, right?
Yes. Execution. Yes, it is. It removes in execution. It could analyze patterns, it identify what is meaningful. It removes the human from the loop entirely. It decides what tests to generate, at what scale, comprehensively, and generates without judgment, and its accumulation is machine speed. It seems to have the capacity to just do the opposite, isn't it?
So here you're mentioning about AI, right? And what do you mean about that?
It could, but it could be. I could analyze patterns, identify what's meaningful versus noise, which surface which they serve purposes versus just activity. The capability for discernment is seemingly unprecedented, but probably using it more often for accumulation now.
And the tools we build reflect these choices? Or like, are they consistently making the choice?
Yep, because activity, you see, questions. When we do activity, questions are comfortable. They are measurable. How do we run the test faster? How do we cover more? These have clear answers, clear metrics. Those questions are a little uncomfortable. Do we need this test? What are we trying to accomplish? Is this serving a purpose? They require judgment, wisdom, and the courage to say no.
So what are the tools that reflect these choices?
Um, the AI testing tools help us do activity faster for sure. They don't help us question whether the activity serves the purpose unless we chose to put that question in. Not because they can't. Most often we don't ask them. So we end up using it like a faster tool.
So could they answer them?
Absolutely. Imagine an AI that says, here for example, 3,000 tests haven't caught a bug in the last couple of years. And here's the evidence. Or this is the area that has a high user impact and probably low coverage. Focus here. Or these tests are redundant and there's an overlap. The technology is there today to help serve the discernment.
We are asking it to serve accumulation.
Yes. Like using the Netherlands urban planning capacity to build more flyovers in Bangalore, faster instead of asking what people need to achieve purpose over activity, right?
So this basically requires pausing, doesn't it, to ask these purpose questions, right?
Yes, it does. And that's the discipline in testing, the probe, the probing, the winnowing, the focusing before writing the test probe. What are we trying to understand? What are we trying to de-risk? As things evolve, winnow, adjust, discard, add, serve, fine-tune it. Does it still serve the purpose? Always focus. Is this potent as an activity? Adjust. And therefore, learn to improvise as we go.
And this discipline requires pause.
Yes, it requires pause. It does. And human testing had forced pauses, you see. Writing test took thought. Automation reduced those pauses when the execution became instant. AI seems to eliminate them entirely because generation or some form of thinking to generate seems to have become automatic.
No pause means no space for purpose questions, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yes, indeed. Exactly. Tools give us speed, allow us to pause, isn't it? Speed to
Yeah.
execute, speed to generate, speed to accumulate, and speed is valuable when activity serves the purpose. But again, the question is the speed without the purpose and alignment is just a frantic activity.
And as we discussed, the airport conveyor has both.
Yeah, that's what struck me when I looked at the airport conveyor then, that it seemed to have the speed with the purpose. It seems to have both.
Mm-hmm.
And
So, yeah.
please.
So could they create that space? Like, is there any possibility of the space there?
Yes, they can. You look at this. We had speed and pause to scan, sort, truth, verify purpose. Testing tools seem to have the pause. They don't create the space, but they really could if you ask them to. But that question that requires us to value the pause when every time, every pushes, and everyone or everything pushes for speed. To ask why, when, how faster has clearer answers.
Got it. So what do we do? This feels like a really massive problem.
Interestingly, when I do consult, I find that commonplace, the act of accumulation of past coming into the present, and therefore the present is adjusted not to do so much for the future, right? But I don't have a clear answer. I don't think that's a failure. I think I'm just being honest about it. And I see that in every organization that I see. The accumulation is a problem, not just in life, but also in whatever we do in our professional work, in this case, testing.
What do you mean by that?
Problem is we want answers that look like activity. Here are 5 steps to reduce. Everybody asks me, hey, is there a template? Is there a tool? Is there a magic? And here are 5 steps to reduce your test suite. But the real work is really learning to live with the purpose question, not solving them once, but asking them continuously. Because you see, truly speaking, we don't really solve a problem. We just transform the problem to a different domain. And there's no such thing as a clean solution. Solution keeps on happening, and that's what it is.
You mentioned about asking questions. So what are those questions according to you?
And before testing, what is the purpose I'm serving? What does the activity serve the purpose? When you say purpose, why am I building this? How is it improving the value of my deliverable to the customers, to the company, and so on and so forth? And why am I running these tests? What kind of issues am I looking for? So you're really asking questions at the highest level, to the lowest level, so to speak, right? And therefore, align my activities with this purpose. And they really apply everywhere.
Everywhere, like the closet, the courts, the traffic, and progression from human testing to AI tools.
That's the connection that I thought when I looked at this, the newfangled AI, which is being, in some sense, which I feel may be abused. Yes, every stage, because most of the time we are very keen to optimize, to make it efficient. Efficiency seems obviously to the mantra, more so because we live in an age of speedy times, everything is fast. We optimize the activity over questioning purpose, right? The human testing had natural breaks because we are slow. By the way, nature itself, I guess it's fundamentally, slow by our engineering standards. But these natural breaks, will remove them with accumulation. Well, automation seems to have some judgment, and we're removing that with probably, or some people are removing that with probably AI. Now, on each step, the accumulation also accelerates.
We consistently choose this path, right?
It's easier, isn't it? It's because I can measurable, because comprehensive AI generated coverage sounds like progress. Is it serving the purpose? Are we more confident? Do we understand systems better? Do we find meaningful risks? It's an interesting question.
Or are we just generating and running more and more tests?
That's a question to sit with. Not solve, maybe to sit with.
The Netherlands showed the other way is also possible.
They did, because it was purpose, right? They said pause, question, purpose. So we had purposes. What's the purpose? To move people. And they asked the question, who? And then somebody said child, somebody said, people who want to shop, and somebody said people who want to work, and so on. So they said pause, question, purpose, designed to serve that purpose. And therefore they created less traffic and they had better outcomes, right? And not because they just had better tools, but they just seemed to ask different questions.
And do you think we will, in testing, in AI tools, ask these questions?
I think, yes, we can. The capacity is there. I guess some people ask. A lot of people probably are not yet asking. And yeah, certainly AI could help us probe for purpose. It's got great capability, great capacity to help us probe, to help us discern some of the purposes. They know it ruthlessly in what we have, and help us focus on what is probably potent. But what it allows us to shift our mindset to asking different questions, where we're valuing wisdom over efficiency and pausing when everything pushes for speed. And that is possible with intelligent systems today.
And also remembering that activity is not a purpose.
Yes, you bet. I think it's been repeated many times, right? Testing is not just understanding. It's not just testing. It's understanding. It's comprehension. Coverage is not just concept. It's not confidence. It's just because you've got great coverage doesn't necessarily mean you get confidence, and so on. So therefore, in the same context, AI generation is not wisdom. Accumulation is not progress.
And where does someone really starts?
Well, I guess before we reach to the next tool, like, human effort, automation, or AI, I guess we need to pause and ask, what am I trying to accomplish with the new set of tools? And how does it align to the context of larger purpose? And that pause is not always a little uncomfortable because we all like new toys. And pause seems to be like, falling behind. And that's why the purpose and clarity emerges. It's where we remember the tools are just here to serve a purpose and not just drive our activity.
So it's always the pause that we keep skipping.
More often, yes, I guess that happens. Because, every new technology, new tool, new process, new methodology, whatever, I mean, it's exciting, isn't it? And it's like get a kid with a candy. And that's why we probably don't pause as much. And every stage from human testing, the automation, the AI, it's all great fun and it's nice. Each tool, bigger promises, right? And each removes some friction. Each enable more accumulation. And remember, when you have less friction, you buy more, you hoard more, you do more. And we never paused. And we never paused to ask, what's the purpose?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sitting with these questions and I'm not necessarily answering them with a clean answer. I'm just sitting with them. I'm saying maybe it's all about questions. What if our tools' greatest capacity, the human creativity, the automation efficiency, the AI intelligence isn't to help us do more. It is to really help us understand what's enough. Probably sounds philosophical, isn't it?
Yeah. But that was indeed an interesting conversation. And like knowing the idea of accumulation and its problems.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I enjoyed the entire conversation. And thank you, Avani, for that.
Thank you. Thank you.